Hey guys, welcome so much to the Writing Center workshop today. Today we're going to be looking at how to write a rhetorical analysis. Okay, so what is a rhetorical analysis? So what I like to think of when I think about this topic is how rhetorical analyses are more interested in a literary work for what it does than for what it is. Right, so when we think about that, we're really focusing less on what the speaker is saying, for instance, and more how is he saying it? What tools is he using to get his message across? So that's kind of the thought process that we want to build when we're going through this. Okay, so looking at the slides, rhetorical analysis is something that analyzes how language use contributes to the author's meaning and or purpose. Right, so really thinking less about what the author's saying and how what he specifically says to get the message across comes in to build his meaning. Okay, so what is a rhetorical appeal? So these are attempts to gain audience approval, thinking buy-in, by appealing to natural human tendencies or emotions. So we have three rhetorical appeals. These would be pathos, ethos, and logos. Okay, I'm going to just go into those a little bit more to help you see it better when you're writing your own papers. So we'll start with pathos. This one is pretty common. It's something we're really, it's a tool we use to really pull at the audience emotions. And we do this purposefully, that way then they get on our side, right? They buy into what we're saying, they approve of our ideas because we're stirring up some kind of emotion. It might be pity, it might be gratitude, excitement, even anger or resentfulness, any sort of emotion, but just this idea that we're using emotions and we're trying to stir them up in the audience, that way they come to our side of the argument. Okay, the next one is ethos. And this one is really looking at the writer's credibility. And we're using this credibility as proof of our evidence, right? And this one is something that we see a lot, maybe if we're looking at a scientific paper or something like that. And, maybe you're writing a paper on molecular biology and you're like, okay, one good reason that I can use to say why my argument is true is to really just look at who I am citing from. And you're like, hey, this is a doctor from Harvard, obviously knows what they're doing in this field, right? So it's basically, you're just really relying on your source's credibility, someone else's credibility. Maybe it's even the speakers themselves. Like, yeah, they know what they're talking about. And that's how you really back up your own argument. Okay? For an example, maybe even it's like your SI leader, they're like, well, my SI leader is really smart, she passed the class, I'll believe her when she says how to study, versus maybe talking to someone who never took the class, and you're like, well, you don't really know how to study for this, you've never had it, right? So really relying on someone's credibility. Okay, the final one is logos, and this one is the most common of the rhetorical appeals. We see this one everywhere in academic writing. It's just data, sound reasoning, that kind of thing. In fact, it can be used so often, it's hard to even notice, because anytime you have a logical thought progression, you're really just showing people how your reasoning is going, that would be logos. And it's very effective, so that's why we use it a lot. Okay, next are the rhetorical devices, and these are stylistic techniques used to help convey meaning, such as rhetorical strategy is another word for this. Examples are allusion, alliteration, imagery, repetition, syntax, diction. So again, these little tools, that's why they're called techniques, strategies, devices, smaller tools that are just used to really build up what you're saying and to just contribute to the author's meaning. Okay, so on to the next slide, please. All right, so how to read the prompt effectively. So of course you go through, you read the material. And then after you do that, you ask yourself a few questions, right? You ask yourself, does this prompt tell me what the author is trying to say? Because for instance, your prompt might tell you when so-and-so author says XYZ, he is trying to do this. And then you already know what to look for, and you can find devices that contribute to that meaning. And then if not, then it's up to you. So you can read through the whole speech yourself and figure out what is the author trying to say. Small thing, but you just want to keep it in mind, because if your prompt is already maybe in focusing on one aspect of someone's speech, because maybe the speech hit a few issues, you want to make sure you analyze the right one of the issues to get full points on your paper. Okay, next is then, does it tell you what devices to analyze? Also important, for instance, for me, when I was in Rhet 1302, my professor said you may not use any of the rhetorical appeals. So no pathos, ethos, logos. And that's important because some classes you might be able to do that. But in mine, we just couldn't because the professor was saying, no, you need to pick actual devices. So again, if they tell you to look at certain ones, do it. If they don't, then also that's fine. You can completely make your own judgment. Which is also fun because then you can analyze it yourself and see what really contributes to the author's meaning or purpose. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so picking rhetorical devices. So you want to make sure you find good examples of whatever devices you choose. And think about it when you're looking for it. Can you use this to really explain how each example contributes to the meaning? Okay, how many devices do you need? So for this, it's really going to depend on the length of the text, the professor's requirements, and how much analysis you have for each. Because sometimes you can have a device that comes up often in a speech, and at that rate, you don't need to look at maybe 4 different devices. Maybe 1 will do, 2 will do. Other times, there might be devices that, a lot of devices pop up, but we only see them maybe once in the whole paper for each. So at that rate, you're going to want to definitely look for, if you're making like a 4-page paper, you're going to want to try to find maybe 3 good devices to analyze. So really important to keep in mind how many times it's coming and how strong are the examples of each, because you want to build the strongest case possible in your analysis. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so how to organize your essay. And this is super important. I will say this is one example of how you can do it. So you can do other things, but this is a really good template to show you just how to seam everything together so you hit all the important components of an analysis paper. Okay, so we start with the thesis, and the idea of this is to really bring it all together. So looking at the example, it says the author uses X, Y, and Z to convey the message that, okay, fill in the blank. So what we're seeing here is we're listing X, Y, Z, those are our appeals or devices, and we want to really focus on the thesis because it's almost like a roadmap for the rest of the paper. So everything else is going to flow from that and keep linking back up. It's telling us exactly where the paper is going to go. Also, something important you want to keep in mind with this is if you list 3 devices, what you want to do is continue the paper with those devices in order. So if you say the author uses syntax, diction, and alliteration to convey the message that, what you are going to want to do is make sure you follow in the same order. Don't change the order up and go, oh, okay, so now first I'll discuss diction. It's like, no, you said you would do that third. So make sure you follow it, that way your reader knows exactly what you're talking about, and it's easy for them to track. And the more clear and understandable something is, the stronger your paper is going to be. So definitely keep that in mind. Okay, body paragraphs. So with this, we want to develop the analysis for each device. So traditionally, you'll have 1 paragraph for each device you analyze. So 1 focusing on syntax, 1 focusing on alliteration, 1 focusing on diction, right? So you go through and you start the body paragraph with the topic sentence. And what you want to do is make it crystal clear. Even if you feel like you're being boring, just start it off again and say, by doing X, right, going in order of the thesis, by doing X, the author strengthens the idea that. Okay, so you're showing very effectively, 1, here's what we're looking at, and 2, here's what the author is doing with it. Okay, next we have the evidence. So now you just made a statement, so you want to immediately back it up. And we do this by pulling a quotation from the source we used. In this case, likely a speech. So use that and you say okay, the author creates this effect when they state that blah, 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 blah. All right. And then after that part's pretty simple, just pull from the text. And then after that is the analysis. And you're going to be thinking, how does this evidence show that this device contributes to the meaning? By using this technique, the writer causes this response in the reader. This response makes message more powerful to the reader. So as you can see with this is not a summary, and we'll talk a little more about that in a second, but you're really taking what you just said with your topic sentence and your evidence, and you're again emphasizing how by doing this, the writer is causing this to happen. He's causing this emotion. It makes the reader feel this way, right? You're kind of thinking along those lines. And then you're saying when he does this, it makes the message more powerful, right? So we're not just saying, this is what he said, evidence, quote where he said it, and then saying, so as you can see, the writer just said that. No. We're actually trying to pull out what that does for the reader. Okay? All right, so again, just keep that in mind. For each body paragraph, just really think about it. Topic sentence, evidence, and then analysis. And the evidence and analysis piece, you can do multiple times within the same paragraph. Obviously, one topic sentence for the whole paragraph, but you could do topic sentence, evidence, analysis, and then maybe you found a second example where they also use syntax or diction or something. So then you go through again and you do the next evidence, and then you do the same analysis. And you basically do that as many times as you want. Obviously, when you move to the next device, then start a new paragraph with a new topic sentence. All right, okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so here we are going to look at this example. This is the rhetorical analysis essay that I did, and I did the speech of Alexander the Great. So we're going to read through this, and you'll also see I color-coded things to make it easier for you to see the different spots and really focus in on the different segments, right? Topic sentences, evidence, analysis. Okay, so we'll start with the thesis. So, quote, by employing the rhetorical device of topical organization, Alexander constructs a powerful address that prompts his weary army to continue their campaign into India. So this is a thesis. It happens at the end of the first paragraph, also known as the introduction. So this is actually just how it would have looked in my essay, minus the colors, obviously, but you jump straight from the thesis to the topic sentence of the first paragraph. And it might feel a little repetitive because you might start off with like, okay, well, she's kind of saying the exact same thing again. But no, it's fine. And you say, in his first subtopic, Alexander intentionally displays before his company the catalog of conquests. So that's my topic sentence. And then you go into the evidence. He lists over 30 of the army's recent achievements, then questions. With all that you accomplished, why do you hesitate to extend the power of Macedon, your power, to the other side? Alexander, make sure to cite your evidence, of course. And then we go to the analysis. By building his army's confidence with a reminder of their abilities, Alexander paves the way for his men to favorably receive his challenge. In light of everything the army has been able to achieve already, it is reasonable to expect they will be able to continue winning. Although insufficient in itself to convince his soldiers to stay with the campaign, a reflection of former successes provides Alexander's audience with a critical measure of encouragement. Okay, so you clearly see topic sentence, analysis, and topic sentence, evidence, and analysis. And looking at the evidence especially, right, you want to do something that directly relates to what you're going to say, and then the analysis should directly come from your evidence, right? And again, looking at what the example that I just gave you, really thinking about, we don't want this to summarize, you don't want to just kind of restate what you said in the evidence, you want to say different things. So like, in light of everything the army has been able to achieve, it's reasonable to expect they'll be able to continue winning. And then the next sentence is really good to think about too when you do this, because something that some professors even require is in the prompt is for you to keep touching on, was it effective, was it ineffective? So here it's good to say it was a good thing to say, but it was insufficient in itself to convince them to keep going. Right, you don't have to say even every time, oh, it was, the best thing he could have said. It was so effective. It's all right to say, because this is your analysis. You can be like, well, it was pretty good, but it wasn't enough. It was slightly insufficient to make them keep doing, to make the message really resonate. So make sure you also do throw in, was it effective? Was it sufficient? Was it ineffective, right? That's completely up to you, whatever you do think about it. But also something that some professors require, and even if they don't, it's a good way to really just draw out some analysis by really, just analyzing yourself. Was it any good? Because if that's what we're trying to see. Okay, so now we can go to the next slide, please. Yes, we're going to look at summary versus analysis, because this is something you'll really want to focus in on once you get the pattern down of what you're going to do. A really easy trap to fall into is to do summary instead of analysis. So what do I mean by that? Let's look at the traits of each, and that'll help clear it up a little bit. So traits of a summary. So with this, we're identifying the main points or elements. We're identifying what was stated, or what is included. We're identifying thoughts or contributions that other people had. There's no argument or no conclusion that we really bring out at all. Right, so we're just kind of stating what it was. So this speech was about blah. That would be summary, right? We're just saying this is kind of what was said. He hit on this, she said that. Also, traits of an analysis. On the other side, this is what we're trying to do. We are trying to make an argument or reach a conclusion. So with this, we're choosing specific elements or areas to study. We're examining, we're interpreting, we're discussing why each element connects to the other pieces. Might be discussing causes and effects, strengths, weaknesses, right? And then like we talked about, discussing how effective was it ineffective, etc. So with this, we're really just going to think summary, what happened, when did it happen, to whom did it happen, right? That's what we want to avoid. Just the baseline facts that basically they could look up themselves just by reading the same speech. And then analysis, what we're trying to go for is the idea of why did this happen? What effect did it produce? Why does it matter? Was it effective? Right, that's analysis. That's what we're trying to think through, really focusing away from the what and more into the why, how, what did it do because of that, right? So that's what we're really trying to think through when we're thinking through analysis. Okay, so on to the next slide, please. Okay, so here we're going to take a look at another example and really just see summary versus analysis and action. So this is another example for you, and we're going to start off with the summary. Quote, Jane Austen uses indirect dialogue in her novel Emma. She accomplishes this through the third-person tense and the use of dashes. Right, so we're reading this and we're saying Jane Austen is using indirect dialogue. And again, that's not something you can really argue with, right? It just kind of is stating the fact. It's just stating what happened. And if someone reads the book themselves, they can completely validate it on their own. Again, she accomplishes this through the third-person tense and the use of dashes. So we're looking at this, and again, there's nothing to argue. We're not really saying why it mattered. We're not saying what effect it has on the people reading the book. We're just saying she did this, and then she did it through using this. So it's nice, we're drawing out more information, but it's really something that you could just take a look at yourself and by reading the book. So it's no original thoughts. Okay, analysis. So with this, we're saying through the use of indirect dialogue in her novel Emma, Jane Austen forces her readers to look beyond the content of the conversation and examine the characters of those speaking. So again, with this, it already has a different tone, right? It's something where we can have a conversation about, we can have an argument about, right? We can actually try to see, is this true? And you couldn't do it just by reading the facts of the novel, because we're saying, she's using indirect dialogue, but she's doing this with it. And she's making her readers think about this and feel these different things. So again, this is clearly more of an analysis because it's looking at what effect does it produce in the readers instead of just saying, here's what she does. Okay, next section. This is evident in chapter 42 when Austen pens, strawberries and only strawberries can now be thought or spoken of. The best fruit in England, everybody's favorite. Only objection to gathering strawberries, the stooping. Glaring sun, tired to death, could bear it no longer, must go sit in the shade. Okay, so that's your evidence, right? You've drawn exactly what you're talking about, so the reader's on track with you. And then we go on to the analysis, which is really about discussing implications. Okay, so this approach strips away traditional small talk norms and so reveals a glaring inconsistency and triviality in the conversation. By using indirect dialogue, Austen displays the monotony and shallowness of the conversation vividly and effectively impels the reader to consider the thought process of the speaker. So again, analysis, answering the questions, is it effective? What does she do? Sorry, not what does she do, but how does she do it? And what does it make the readers think, right? Because we look at it and we're like, oh, this is something entirely new. She is making her readers feel how the conversation drags. She's making them to consider the thought process of the speaker, right? Entirely different than just saying, she uses indirect dialogue and she does this by using dashes. So again, really looking into the analysis, thinking about the implication, the how, the why, not just what did Jane Austen do, but why does it matter the way she made it happen, right? So really thinking about the why. If you can just keep thinking about the why when you're writing your papers, you'll be in good shape. Again, if you read through what you write after you put in your evidence, and if you look at it and you tell yourself, you know what, I'm seeing that I'm answering a lot of what questions. What did she say? What did she do? If you see yourself answering a lot of what, then just pause and start thinking, ask yourself, write them down if you need to, why questions. Why does it matter? What effect does it produce? Right? How is this effective? Things like that, where it just kind of is more really drilling into the subject and making conclusions more than just stating the facts. Okay? So that's, a piece of advice I have for you that'll really help, catch yourself before you do summary, because it is a rhetorical analysis, so you really want to focus on making a good analysis. Okay, so summary. This is when you do want a summary, right? At the end of a slide. Okay. Rhetorical analysis is a tool we use to investigate how language contributes to the meaning and the purpose of an author. So, really important to keep in mind. It might sound basic by the time you get through the whole presentation, but we do want to think of it. It's a tool we're using to investigate how the language contributes to the meaning and purpose, right? So we're not actually looking at the content, but we're seeing how the specific words she says build her meaning and build her purpose, right? So keep that in mind, because that's so critical. And if you can remember that we're looking at how her specific words build her content instead of thinking, what's the content, then you'll be in really good shape for the rhetorical analysis. So if anything else, do keep that in mind. Okay, so next, we do this by locating and examining rhetorical appeals, pathos, ethos, and logos, and/or rhetorical devices, alliteration, irony, metaphor, imagery, repetition, etc. So yeah, like others of you said, there's also parallelism, juxtaposition, so a lot of good devices out there that speakers use, and we can see how they build what we're trying to say with our argument, right? Because if Malala didn't use parallelism, if she didn't use juxtaposition, it would not have been such a memorable speech. It would just have been like, oh, okay, well, that's nice. She said what, like, is, true and yada yada, but it wouldn't just stick in people's mind and create such change as it did without those devices. So that's what we're trying to see. What the specific words we use really bringing out the content we're saying. So again, thinking about that. That's what I want you to walk away with, which is why I keep saying it. So thesis statement, to make your central arguments and body paragraphs to really just bring out the rhetorical techniques and tie everything together. A good three-pronged attack that I like to use is topic, sentence, evidence, and then analysis. And then the evidence analysis part, you can keep doing those two over and over within the same paragraph until you run out of the devices that you wanted to, the instances of that device that you want to analyze. But again, yeah, just evidence and then analysis, and kind of keep doing that one after the other. As you can see, there's really no place for summary, so don't put it in. It'll get its time in another paper, but this is not for it. Okay, and then finally, seek out help to sharpen your abilities. Just remember that you have important things to say, and we at the Writing Center really want to help you bring those things out so that you can be heard, because you do have important things to say. So, and then, yep, those are the sources, because plagiarism is not good. All right, I think that concludes everything that we are doing with these workshops tonight. So thank you so much for you guys for coming. It's just a joy to talk to you all, and I'm just very proud of you for coming and taking initiative about your papers and just taking your success into your own hands like this. So good job for coming, and we hope to see you around again.